Hi, I'm Marina Bach.
And I'm Romero. And who doesn't love animals, especially horses? Well, today we're going to talk about the gentle giants of horses.
And those gentle giants are known as Clydesdales. Here at Grant's Farm, we're going to be talking to an expert over them, Amy Trout.
You're going to hear all about it coming up on this episode of On the Inside. So we're here right now with Amy Trout. And Amy, first of all, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thanks for being here. Welcome to Grant's Farm.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, tell us what your position here is at Grant's Farm.
Okay, so I'm the supervisor of the Clydesdales and the other equines that are across the road at Grant's Farm. I've also recently taken over the deer park, so all the critters that are out in the deer park. So I'm taking care of all those guys right now. So I have a lot on my plate, but I would have to say that my favorite part of the job is definitely dealing with the Clydesdales.
Great.
And then could you kind of just go back into your history and why do you have this great passion and love for Clydesdales?
Well, I came from a small farm in Virginia, and my parents had some draft horses when I was growing up as a kid. So I always had a passion for horses, started driving. My dad actually did all his farm work with horses, so like he was actually using them for mowing and, you know, all these kinds of things. So I kind of grew up with it. And, you know, as I got older, we kind of left the horses a little behind, but I always had that passion. And so when I graduated from college, I went to North Dakota State University. My degree is in animal science, and I always wanted to come back to horses. But, you know, when you just graduate from college, like, you just take what jobs are available, right? And so I started teaching high school. So I taught high school for a couple years. And even though I enjoyed it, I learned a lot. My passion really was working with horses. So I was really fortunate that I was able to get hired on with Anheuser-Busch. And so here I am, you know, 18 years later, still with the same company. So it's been a great ride.
Right. And how long have you been here at Grant's Farm? You've been with Anheuser for 18.
Yes.
But how long here at Grant's Farm have you been on these facilities?
I've been here for 8 years.
Okay.
Yep. And it's been really, really exciting. This facility, once upon a time, was actually a breeding farm for Anheuser-Busch. And in 2008, we opened our brand new state-of-the-art breeding facility, which is Warm Springs Ranch. That's out in Boonville, Missouri. And so they moved all of the mares and all of the stallions to the new breeding farm. And so this place was kind of, they weren't really sure what the direction was going to be here. And so over the last few years, we've turned this into a training facility. So this is the prep school for the Clydesdales. And it's also a place where any horse can come for R&R that needs a little rest or time off the road. Any horses that are recovering from an injury or illness will come here and kind of like nurse them back to health kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And then when the older horses retire from the road, they'll actually come back here, and then we'll decide if we want to keep them and use them for photos or commercials, or if we want to find a home for them. And we've got a great connection with some mounted police units across the country. So sometimes when we have horses that come through the program and maybe they're not quite going to make the hitch, but they're really a great horse, sometimes they'll go to a mounted patrol and they make wonderful police horses.
Nice.
Wow. And just also, I guess I'd like to know, what has been your most enjoyable experience working here? Because it's doing something you love first and foremost, so that's always going to make it great.
Yeah.
But I just imagine doing the things you do here on a day-to-day basis with all these horses. I mean, what's been your favorite moment?
Like, one of the greatest things is, so when we get these babies here, they're like 6 months old and they know virtually nothing, okay? And so we spend all this time, like 3.5 years, like working with these guys, and then they go on to New Hampshire, and then they've got one more year of training, and then they finally get to make the hitch, right? So I was sitting at a local restaurant here, and it was opening day for the Cardinals, and they kind of zoomed in on the Clydesdales as they were going around the hitch, and I remember sitting there and I was like, okay, I trained that horse, and that horse, and I'm like, yes, there's my guys, you know, my kids that
Right.
I put so much time and so much energy into making the big time, you know. So that's like the best feeling in the world when you see them out there doing the deal. And one time, same kind of situation, we were watching the Rose Bowl parade, and here comes the Budweiser Clydesdales, and I'm like, oh, like, look, there's Archie, and there's this guy and that guy, and, you know, like
Right.
all of them came through the training program here, so I had my hands on every one of those guys. So that's like the greatest feeling ever.
Wow.
Yeah,
You're kind of
pretty
like the
cool.
mother.
Yes.
You're the mother here.
The
Well,
proud
you know,
parent.
Yes.
You know, when they're here, it's not just grooming and the fun stuff. It's taking care of all of the aches and pains of growing up a baby Clydesdale. It's no different than children. They get colds. They have medical issues. I mean, there's a lot of nurturing. There's a lot of things that you do with these guys, and so, you know, to put so much time and energy into them, and then see them finally make the big time.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I bet.
And so with having 30 some not Clydesdales here, is there a decent mix as far as ages of the horses? Because you mentioned you
Yeah.
get some at 6 months, so
Yeah.
you've got these little guys in here
Yep.
with the old guys. How
Yep.
does that usually work out?
So the younger horses, we tend to group the horses together by age. So like the young ones that are 3 months of age will pretty much, or 6 months of age will pretty much stick together. And then we'll put the older mature horses together as well. If they get kind of intermixed together, sometimes there can be a little pushing and shoving. So we try to keep them basically the same ages stick together.
Got you.
So I don't know. You can kind of see over there. There's a couple little guys standing in the shed, and that's what they look like when they get here. They're pretty small, just starting out, and then you'll see what Evan looks like in a little while when they're full
Gotcha.
grown. So
And so you mentioned there's obviously growing pains the same as, you know, a little kid would getting
Absolutely.
used to different things, and these guys are training to be pretty serious horses. I
Yep.
mean, you're either on the hitch or doing commercial things.
Yeah.
So describe that process a little bit. How does that go as far as maybe the stages? that you
Yeah.
go through?
So with horses, a lot of it is just teaching them patience. So they're used to being running around in the pasture with their mom, doing whatever they wanted to do.
Right.
And so we ask them to come in the barn and stand in, let's say, a cross ties. So we kind of put these little snaps on them. And they don't want to stand still. They'd rather be running around in the
Yeah.
pasture. So we have to do everything in small little increments, and maybe we bring them in for 5 minutes today and tie them up. And then we let them go, and then we bring them back tomorrow, and it's 10 minutes, and we just kind of keep working with them. But it's keeping them calm, keeping them relaxed, so they don't get upset and they don't try to hurt themselves or tear the barn down. They're pretty strong. You'd be surprised what they
bet.
can do. Yeah.
I bet.
So it's kind of a repetitive routine that
Exactly.
they go through.
Yep, exactly. We just kind of keep it the same. And then what we'll do is we'll start introducing things, simple things like just spraying water on those in their legs. You know, they have these beautiful white feathers, that's the long hair in their legs, but they don't come like that. You have to wash them. They have to get used to having the water put on their legs, and then you have to scrub them up with soap and hot water. So, you know, all of these things take time, and it's just a lot of patience, a lot of repetitiveness. One of the things that we practice a lot with these youngsters is going in and out of the trailer. And you don't think about that as being scary, but if you look at a horse trailer, it's usually dark in there.
Right.
Yeah.
When they step on the metal ramp, it
Loud.
echoes and it sounds funny. The trailer shakes a little bit, and they know that this is not normal.
Right.
But they have to trust us to follow us in the trailer. So it's building up rapport. It's like building up a good relationship with these horses where they trust us, they want to follow us. You know, some of these old guys here I've worked with so long, you know, I could say, come on guys, let's go over the Stan Musial Bridge, and they'd be like, okay, I'm right with you. You know, they just have that much trust with us. So
Wow. Well, we're going to have to take a quick break as much as we're enjoying talking to
Yeah.
you. But when we get back, I can't wait to see Evan and get up
Yeah,
close and
definitely.
personal with him.
awesome. Cool.
All right, so we'll be right back after this.
Okay, Amy, can you tell us who we have here with us?
Sure, this is Evan. He is a 13-year-old Budweiser Clydesdale.
Nice.
And I think the most impressive thing about the Clydesdales are their size. They're just so massive.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that they look for as far as selecting Clydesdales?
Okay, so to be a Budweiser Clydesdale and make the hitch, we've got a few requirements. First of all, you have to have this beautiful bay body that Evan has. Even though he's got a few grays up here, he has a black mane and tail. We've got the 4 white legs, and we call that hair on the legs feathers.
Okay.
Okay. Weight-wise, we want him to be over 2,000 pounds, or right at 2,000. He's about 2,150, so he's actually well over the minimum weight requirement. And then height-wise, we want him to be 18 hands, which we actually take the measurement at this point. This is called the withers on a horse, and that's the highest point when his head is down. And so back in the old days, they didn't have standard units of measurement, so they used a hand. And so if you tucked your thumb under, the average man's hand was 4 inches wide. So if I kind of started here and I went hand over hand up his leg to the highest point when his head is down, these guys average exactly 6 foot tall at that point.
Gotcha.
So he's actually a little bit bigger than the average Clydesdale. He's about 18.2 at that point. So he's 6'2".
Gotcha.
So that's kind of how we measure them. So that's the requirements to be a Budweiser Clydesdale in color and size.
And then with color, could you kind of go into color? So are we looking for specific, as you said, like markings on him? By chance?
So the 4 white legs,
Okay.
and the feathers. And then I forgot about mentioning this beautiful blaze down the center of the face. They have to have the white blaze. And then that dark bay body. Now there are different shades of bay, and there's some that are really dark, almost black, and then there's some that is very light, like a real light chestnutty color. But this is like right in the middle. This is the perfect shade of bay for a Budweiser Clydesdale.
He's basically perfect.
Yes, yes he is.
It's a poster boy for Clydesdales.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about what you do here with the Clydesdales.
Sure. So our main job is we are a training facility. So we're like the prep school for the Budweiser Clydesdale. So our kids come to us, I say kids loosely because they're about 6 months old when they arrive here. So they've just been weaned from their moms. They really don't have a lot of ground manners. They've really never been haltered or led around. They're kind of like wild little guys. And so when they get here, that's when school begins. So our job is to get them from 6 months of age until they're almost 4 and teach them all the social graces, all the basic ground manners a horse needs to make the hitch one day. So maybe it's things like standing for the farrier, because every 5 to 6 weeks the farrier comes and we have to trim their feet. Maybe we have to give them a haircut and a bath, so they've got to get exposed and get used to all those kinds of things. So that's what my crew does here, is really work with the young horses, teaching them patience and all of the social graces. As they get a little bit more advanced in their career, closer to 4 years of age, we'll actually introduce some of the harness to them because they're going to have some stuff strapped around their bellies, and it's good for them to get used to all of that. We'll also put a bridle on their head with the bit that goes in their mouth. So all those things they got to get used to. So we'll expose them to all of that here.
And then can we kind of go over Evan's day-to-day basis, kind of what he does?
So Evan is really a commercial superstar.
Okay.
So if you are familiar with the Budweiser Clydesdale commercials, if you remember, there was a commercial that was released in early 2000s, I don't remember exactly the year, but the baby basically put his head in the collar and tried to pull the wagon by himself, and then the big guys got behind and pushed.
Yep.
He was the baby from that commercial.
Really?
He's a superstar.
Yes, he really is a superstar. So this is kind of as exciting as his day gets now. So he doesn't actually pull the wagon, but he does a lot of meet and greets. He's got a great temperament. The Clydesdales are known as the gentle giants.
Yes.
And so sometimes we have to do meet and greets with maybe some kids that have some physical disabilities. Maybe they're in a wheelchair, and he's just got the right temperament for like putting his head right down on their lap, getting down to their level, and he's just a pleasure to work with. So he is a great ambassador for Budweiser.
I see. He's right in his element here in front of camera.
Yes, this is where he shines.
Wow. And so with Evan particularly, did they kind of show those behaviors since you guys get him at 6 months? Do you kind of pick it up pretty soon and see?
Yeah.
Or do they kind of grow into it as they move along?
I think a lot of times you can pigeonhole them pretty early on because you can see the ones that are just bright-eyed and, kind of on their, maybe they're alert and maybe a little more on edge. Those are going to make the great hitch horses. The ones that are really laid back, friendly and come right up to you, they're the ones that fill this commercial role a little bit better. But the great thing about Budweiser is that we need both. We need both of those horses. So we can find jobs for pretty much any of them.
So no one's really getting a day off.
No.
We're staying busy.
No, we are very busy this time of year. So we're going to be open until November the 4th.
Okay.
And so after we close for the season, then these guys can get a nice long winter break.
Right.
Nice.
Let their hair grow out.
Take
Take
yeah.
take
Let
a little
their hair
break.
down. We don't have
Yeah.
to wash them. They'll be dirty.
Nice. And then can we talk about who is here right now? Like how many horses are you guys carrying at this time? And
Sure. So we have about 30 to 35 horses on the property right now.
Okay.
Actually, there's a little more than that. There's probably about 45, but there's about 30 Clydesdales on the property.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And they range in ages from 6 months of age all the way up to our oldest horse is 15 right now. And then we have some of our miniature donkeys and miniature horses and some of our light breeds of horses that are also down here for the winter. The Clydesdale property is actually very nice here at Grant's Farm. We have about 50 acres, so there's a lot of pasture. So we brought some of the horses down from across the road that are not Clydesdales, still in the equine family, but different breeds, and they're kind of kicked out to pasture for the winter already. So it's a nice spot for them.
nice.
Yeah.
So we have many different breeds coming together.
Yeah,
today?
so we've got, so down at the far end of the property, there's like a Norwegian fjord down there. There's a couple quarter horses, an overlander, one of those giant mammoth donkeys. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're kind of cool. And then we've got a bunch of the little guys.
Running
So
around.
we just, this year was the first year we've ever done it. We just are very blessed with lots of great pasture here in the Clydesdale area. So we thought we'd open it up for some of the guys across the road too. Just let them run around and pasture and be horses. So it's kind of cool.
Nice.
And one thing I wanted to ask you, because Evan is just so calm right
Yeah.
now. I mean, not a noise out of him, maybe a little movement. So is that part of what makes Clydesdales such a special horse for people to want as far as policemen and things like that?
That's a great question. So they are known as the gentle giants because just by nature they are a lot more laid back and easygoing than most other breeds of horses. So if you think about thoroughbreds racing in the Kentucky Derby or those those horses are really heads up, high energy,
Right.
can't stand still if you paid them, right? They're just all over the place. Just by nature, Clydesdales are very laid back, very easygoing. So that made them great for delivering of goods and that kind of thing back in the day. A lot of people don't know, like, the history of the Clydesdale horse is kind of interesting, and I'm going a little off topic here. But what they were originally bred to do was these large breeds of horses were popping up all over Europe, and they were bred to carry the knights in armor into battle. So this was kind of like the original tank, if you will. So if you can imagine a horse this size that had a 100-pound man or more strap covered in armor, plus the horse would have had armor all on his body charging at you in battle.
Yeah.
This is the original tank.
It's intimidating.
But they were bred for strength and stamina, not necessarily speed. So they kind of were a little bit more laid back. And then after the wars were over, these horses naturally fell into farm work and delivering of goods. So the Clydesdales' claim to fame is they can walk at a pace of 5 miles an hour carrying twice their body weight. So I told you he was 2150.
Right.
Okay, so he should be able to pull well over 4,000 pounds
Sheesh.
and walk at a pace of 5 miles an hour all day long. So if you think about it, back in those days, this is before you had refrigeration or pasteurization. So your products had a very short shelf life, whether we're talking about beer or milk or any agricultural product. So the faster your horses could go and the more weight they could pull, the more product you could sell, the more money you could make. So that's kind of how these breeds developed. The breeds almost came obsolete back in the 30s because when the invention of the tractor and more modern equipment came into play, they were much more efficient than feeding a giant horse and
Right.
having all the maintenance and upkeep. So the tractors kind of pushed the horses out of the picture a little bit. But the Budweiser family, the Bush family, worked with Budweiser as far as bringing the breed back. And they had put a lot of time and money into importing horses to the U.S. Back in the 40s and the 50s, just to kind of help get the numbers of the breed up because it had dropped down to the point where it was endangered, really.
Wow.
So now the Clydesdale breed is one of the most popular draft horse breeds in the United States, and a lot of that has to do with the popularity of Budweiser in the commercials over the years.
Right.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Evan.
Yeah, and when we come back, we're going to sit down with Evan a little more and do some grooming. Marina?
Definitely.
We'll be right back.
What to expect when you're expecting
Like here.
a teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to team-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys. preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey. Ready for the...
Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
All right, so right now we've got Evan there behind us, and in a couple of minutes here, we're gonna pull him inside the barn.
And then Amy's gonna pull out the brushes for us and we're gonna start the grooming process on Evan. And now we're back with Amy and Evan, and she's gonna go over how the grooming process goes down.
Yeah, absolutely. So every day that the horses are on display for the public, we'll actually wash their legs, they're gonna get groomed, and once a week they get a haircut and a full body bath with conditioner in the works.
Nice.
So what I want you guys to do is do a little grooming here.
All right.
So basically you just kind of want to go with the hair a little bit and just kind of groom down his neck and on his back there, and they really get into the grooming.
So he's enjoying this.
Yes.
I bet.
They really like, you know, and sometimes people who have really long nails, if you hit the right spot, look at his head.
Oh,
He loves it. Good right there.
He's got his sweet spot.
Yes, so they really do like the attention. They love being groomed. And this is a great opportunity for the crew to kind of get their hands on him, and, you know, you might notice if something was wrong, if he had a little itchy spot or maybe a bump or a lump or something. During the daily grooming is a great time to give them a physical exam and just make sure that they're healthy.
And so, with that, is that when you generally use that time, or do you have a different set time that you like to try to get up close and personal and see if there's anything that may be going
Well,
on?
throughout the day, we're always looking for any health issues. But in the morning, the first thing we do is feed them. So, you know, if the horses are acting normal, they're going to be, you know, right at the feed trough ready for breakfast.
Right.
And if a horse is not at the feed trough ready for breakfast and kind of hanging back, well, that might tell us that maybe he's not feeling well. And maybe we need to take a little harder look at what might be going on. But then when we get our hands on them and groom them, a lot of times there's things that going on with the horse's body that maybe you can't see with the eye, but you can feel. Like maybe you can feel a little lump under the skin. Maybe they got kicked or have a little bruise or something. And sometimes if you touch a spot that's sensitive, they may kind of shudder and pull away from you. And then that's an indication that maybe you need to take a little closer look. And that way, you know, we're always looking to give our horses the best health care possible. And so it's never just once a day, it's constant. We always want to be checking to make sure our horses are well cared for.
Definitely. And then can we kind of go over the bathing process? Like, where do we go? Are we here in the stables?
How do we start? Well, actually, our wash rack is just down the alleyway there.
Okay.
Sometimes we refer to it as the car wash. We actually we have a hose that kind of goes over their head, because if the hoses are on the ground, you know, a lot of times when they step on the hose, it'll put a hole in it and your hose is done.
Yep.
So we have kind of this car wash where the hoses swing over their heads, and we'll get them wet and we'll actually suds them up just like you would in the shower, and wash their hair, and then we come back with conditioner, and then we rinse it all out, and then they get to just air dry. We don't have to blow dry.
Yeah.
Just air dry. And then with the haircuts, what we'll do, even though we're trying to let him grow his winter coat right now, but we'll actually trim the hair around the ears. We'll trim this piece right here we call the bridle path. We'll trim the hair around his eyes, around his whiskers, his chin, actually go down his neck, kind of his belly and in between his legs. And so that's kind of like our normal haircut routine. As we're getting into the fall and it's getting a little cooler, we won't trim as much. We'll kind of want them to start growing their natural winter coat.
Gotcha. And is there a technique as to cutting it, like a certain length that you, like a window that you have to keep it at?
Well, there's ideal levels. So, you know, if you think about like a surgical clip, you know, if we were like clipping down to the skin for medical procedure, that's not what we want them to look like on the day-to-day. So we have different settings on our clipper blades, so we can make them leave the hair a little bit longer if we need to. So typically we shave the hair around the ears pretty close and on the top of their head pretty close, but we may leave the hair on the neck and the belly a little bit longer. So there definitely is a technique, and when you're clipping horses, it depends on how much pressure you put on the clipper and how hard you press against their body. Dictates how close a clip you get against the skin as well. sticking your tongue out for.
And then right now we're expecting a lot of shedding to be happening.
Well, they're not shedding as much right now as they will in the spring, but they are still losing a little bit of summer hair as that winter hair is growing in. And, next spring, you can always tell when the weather is warming because there will literally be piles and piles of hair around from when these guys start losing their winter coats.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And so with grooming, do you pull the guys out one at a time? Is it too hectic to try to get a couple done at once?
Yeah, typically
so massive.
we have 2 spots in the wash rack down there, so we can bring 2 horses in at a time. But I only have 2 hands, so I can only do 1 horse at a time. So if I've got someone working with me in there, we can usually get a couple horses done in a pretty short order. But sometimes, you want to spend a little extra time on them. So if I spent 45 minutes to an hour grooming each horse, that's okay.
All right, so today we got a chance to talk to Amy and about what it's like to raise Clydesdales as well as train them and a couple of the little things that go into doing it.
We really got a backstage pass. We got hands-on experience at the Clydesdale, and hopefully we'll be back one day.
Absolutely. I'm Romero Starks.
And I'm Marina Bach. Thank you for joining us.
For more information about Grant's Farm and the Clydesdales here, you can visit them online at grantsfarm.com.
You can also follow and like them on Facebook and Twitter.